What happens when a simple question about charity work turns into television chaos? In just 36 seconds, one of the most anticipated interviews of the year went from friendly conversation to complete disaster, ending with security escorting a guest off the set. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think about what went down. Now, let's talk about what really happened. Tamron Hall is known for being one of the kindest, most respectful hosts on television. She asks tough questions, sure, but she does it with grace. She listens. She gives her guests space to share their truth. That's why millions of people tune in to watch her show every single day. She's built a reputation on being fair, being honest, and treating everyone with dignity. So, when Meghan Markle agreed to sit down for what was supposed to be a heartfelt conversation about her new projects and life after stepping back from royal duties, everyone expected it to be inspiring. Everyone expected tears, maybe laughter, probably a real moment of connection between two strong women. Nobody, and I mean nobody, expected what actually happened. The interview started off normally enough. Meghan walked onto the set wearing an expensive cream-colored outfit, smiling and waving to the audience. The crowd cheered. Tamron stood up to greet her with a warm hug. They sat down across from each other, and the camera started rolling. For the first few minutes, everything seemed perfectly fine. Tamron opened with a softball question, something easy and light to get things going. "Thank you so much for being here. I know everyone is excited to hear what you've been up to. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been working on lately?" Meghan smiled that practice smile. How she's so good at and launched into a long answer about her various projects. She talked about her podcasts. She talked about her production company. She talked about wanting to make a difference in the world and give voice to people who don't normally get heard. It was all very rehearsed, very polished. Tamron nodded along, listening patiently like she always does. Then Tamron asked her second question, and this is where you could feel the temperature in the room start to shift. "You've spoken before about the importance of service and giving back. Can you tell us about the charitable work you're currently involved in?" It seemed like another easy question, but Meghan's face changed. Her smile got a little tighter. She shifted in her seat. "Well, Tamron, I think it's important to understand that my version of service looks different now. When I was working within the institution, I was told where to go, what to say, which charities I could support. Now I have freedom. I get to choose." Tamron nodded. "Of course. So, which charities are you choosing to work with now?" Meghan paused. "I'm exploring several options. It's about finding the right fit. You know, I can't just attach my name to anything. It has to be authentic." "Absolutely," Tamron said, still smiling, still warm. "Can you name one or two that you're exploring?" Another pause. Meghan's jaw tensed just slightly. "I don't think I need to provide a list, Tamron. My work speaks for itself." The audience went quiet. You could feel the awkwardness spreading through the studio like a wave. Tamron, being the professional she is, didn't miss a beat. "I'm sure it does. I was just hoping to highlight some of the organizations for our viewers who might want to support them too." "Right," Meghan said, and her voice had an edge to it now. "But this interview is supposed to be about my journey, not an interrogation about every single thing I'm doing." Tamron's eyebrows went up just a fraction. "I apologize if it came across that way. That certainly wasn't my intention. I ask all my guests about their charitable work. It's actually one of the things our audience loves most about these conversations. Well, maybe your audience needs to understand that not everything needs to be put on display." Meghan shot back. "Some of us do good work quietly without needing constant validation." The tension was thick. Now, you could see Tamron choosing her words very carefully. "That's a fair point, though. I'd argue that talking about charities on a platform like this actually helps those organizations get donations and support. But let's move on." "I want to talk about no. Let's not move on," Meghan interrupted. "I think we need to address what's really happening here. You invited me on your show, and now you're trying to make me look bad." Tamron looked genuinely confused. "Meghan, I promise you that's not what's happening. I've asked you two questions. Both of them were meant to give you a chance to share the positive work you're doing. That's how it always starts, Meghan said, and her voice was rising now. It starts with innocent questions, and then it becomes a hit piece. I've been through this before. I know how this works. The audience was completely silent. Some people looked uncomfortable. Others looked shocked. Tamron remained calm. I understand you've had difficult experiences with the media. I truly do. But I hope you know that's not what this is. This is a conversation. If there are topics you'd prefer not to discuss, just let me know and we'll talk about something else. Oh, how generous of you, Meghan said, and there was no hiding the sarcasm now. How kind of you to give me permission to control my own narrative on your show. Tamron took a breath. You could see her trying to keep things professional. Meghan, I think maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Let's take a beat. And no, Meghan cut her off again. I don't need to take a beat. What I need is for you to show me some respect. I have been respectful, Tamron said, and for the first time, you could hear a hint of frustration in her voice. I've been nothing but respectful since you walked onto this stage. Respectful? Meghan laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. It was bitter. Respectful would be letting me speak without interrupting. Respectful would be not putting me on the spot with questions clearly designed to embarrass me. I didn't interrupt you, Tamron said firmly, and my questions weren't designed to embarrass anyone. They were basic interview questions that I ask every single guest who sits in that chair. Maybe that's the problem, Meghan said, leaning forward. Maybe you need to realize that not every guest is the same. Maybe some of us deserve different treatment. The audience gasped, actually gasped out loud. Because what Meghan had just said, whether she meant it that way or not, sounded like she thought she was better than everyone else, that she deserved special treatment that other guests didn't get. Tamron's face remained calm, but you could see the steel in her eyes. Now, everyone who comes on this show gets treated with dignity and respect, but nobody gets special treatment. Not celebrities, not politicians, not royalty or former royalty. Everyone gets asked real questions. That's the whole point. Well, maybe I made a mistake coming here, Meghan said, standing up suddenly. Her microphone made a loud scratching sound against her clothing. Maybe you did, Tamron said quietly, but her words carried weight. Meghan looked shocked, like she couldn't believe Tamron had just agreed with her. Excuse me. Tamron stood up too. I said, maybe you did make a mistake. If you came here expecting to be given a platform without any questions, if you expected me to just nod and smile while you talked about yourself for an hour without any substance, then yes, you made a mistake because that's not what we do here. The audience started clapping. Not everyone, but enough people that it was noticeable. Loud enough that it couldn't be ignored. Meghan's face went red. How dare you? How dare you let your audience disrespect me like this? They're not disrespecting you, Tamron said. They're agreeing with me. There's a difference. This is unbelievable, Meghan said, her voice getting louder. Ha! I've been attacked by the media for years. Absolutely destroyed. And I come here thinking maybe, just maybe, I'd found someone who would understand, someone who would be on my side. And instead you do this. I'm not on anyone's side, Tamron said. I'm a journalist. My job is to ask questions and let you answer them. That's it. If you're not comfortable with that, then maybe television interviews aren't for you right now. Don't you tell me what's for me, Meghan snapped. You have no idea what I've been through. No idea what it's like to be scrutinized every single day of your life. Tamron's voice got very quiet, very serious. Actually, Meghan, I do. I'm a black woman in media. I've been scrutinized my entire career. I've been told I'm too much and not enough. I've been criticized for my hair, my clothes, my voice, my questions. I've dealt with racism and sexism and every other awful thing you can imagine. So, please don't stand there and tell me I don't understand struggle. The audience erupted in applause. Real, genuine applause. The kind that comes from people who feel like someone just said what they were all thinking. Meghan looked around the room like she couldn't believe what was happening. I'm not going to stand here and be humiliated. Nobody's humiliating you. Tamron said. "You're doing this to yourself." That was apparently the final straw. Meghan reached up and unclipped her microphone, letting it fall to the floor with a loud thump. "I'm done. I'm leaving." "That's your choice," Tamron said. Meghan started walking toward the exit, but then she turned back around. "You know what? I'm going to make sure everyone knows what happened here today. I'm going to tell them how I was treated, how I was ambushed." Tamron crossed her arms. "You're welcome to tell whatever story you want, but we have cameras. We have footage. And unlike your version, the actual video doesn't lie." "Are you threatening me?" Meghan demanded. "I'm stating a fact," Tamron replied calmly. "You came on this show. You were asked simple, standard questions. You responded with hostility. And now you're leaving. All of that is on tape. Those are just facts." Meghan's hands were shaking now. You could see she was furious. "You're going to regret this." "I don't think I will," Tamron said. "But I am sorry this didn't go the way either of us hoped. I genuinely wish you well, Meghan. I hope you find what you're looking for." Something about the sincerity in Tamron's voice seemed to make Meghan even angrier. Maybe because she couldn't argue with kindness. Maybe because she realized she'd lost control of the situation. "Don't patronize me." "I'm not," Tamron said. "I'm being honest. I think you're hurting. I think you're going through something difficult, but you can't take that out on people who are just trying to do their jobs." "I want to leave," Meghan said. But she wasn't moving. She was just standing there looking lost. That's when Tamron did something really classy. She turned to someone off camera and said, "Can we get someone to help Meghan out, please? Make sure she gets to her car safely." 2 security guards appeared, but they weren't rough or aggressive. They were professional. One of them said something quietly to Meghan that the microphones didn't pick up. She nodded and finally started walking toward the exit. But she couldn't resist one last parting shot. She turned back to face Tamron in the audience. "You're all going to see. You're going to realize you were wrong about me. All of you." "Maybe," Tamron said gently, "but right now, I think you need to take some time to think about why this happened. Really think about it." Meghan opened her mouth like she was going to say something else, but then she closed it. She shook her head and walked out, flanked by the 2 security guards. The studio doors closed behind her with a heavy thud. For a moment, nobody said anything. The audience sat in stunned silence. Tamron stood on the stage looking tired and sad. Then she turned to the cameras. "Well," she said, and there was a little tremor in her voice. "That was not how I saw this afternoon going. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue with our scheduled programming. Thank you for your patience." The camera cut away, but people who were in the audience later said that as soon as they went to commercial, Tamron sat down and put her head in her hands. Not because she'd done anything wrong, but because it's hard to watch someone self-destruct like that. It's hard to be professional when someone is attacking you for no reason. It's exhausting to stay calm when you're being accused of things you didn't do. Her producers rushed onto the stage to check on her. The audience members who had been sitting close to the front said they could hear the producers telling Tamron that she'd handled it perfectly, that she'd done nothing wrong, that Meghan's behavior was completely out of line and unprofessional. Tamron apparently nodded but didn't say much. She just asked for some water and a few minutes to compose herself before they came back from commercial. Meanwhile, backstage, there was chaos. Staff members were talking in urgent whispers. People were checking their phones, probably already seeing social media explode with reactions. Someone said they heard Meghan yelling at her publicist in the hallway, demanding to know why they'd booked her on this show in the first place. When they came back from commercial, Tamron looked completely composed again. Professional gracious. She introduced her next segment like nothing had happened, though she did address the situation briefly. "I want to take just a moment to acknowledge what you all just witnessed," she said to the camera. "I've been doing this job for a long time, and I've learned that sometimes, despite everyone's best intentions, conversations don't go the way we hope. I ask standard questions today, the same questions I ask every guest. I'm sorry if those questions felt uncomfortable, but I'm not sorry for asking them. That's my job. That's what journalism is. I hope everyone watching understands that respect goes both ways. I will always treat my guests with dignity, but I also expect to be treated with dignity in return. Now, let's move on to something more positive. And just like that, she pivoted to her next guest, giving them her full attention and warmth like nothing had rattled her at all. Because that's what professionals do. They don't let one bad moment ruin the entire show. They don't let one difficult person change who they are. Within hours, clips of the interview were everywhere. Social media absolutely exploded. People were analyzing every word, every facial expression, every moment of tension, and the overwhelming response was support for Tamron. People praised her for staying calm, for being fair, for not backing down when she was being attacked unfairly. Some people tried to defend Meghan, saying she was triggered by past trauma with the media, that she was protecting herself from what she perceived as an attack. But even those defenders had to admit that her reaction was disproportionate to what actually happened. Tamron had asked two simple questions about charity work. That was it. Nothing invasive, nothing mean, nothing that warranted the explosion that followed. The contrast between the two women couldn't have been more stark. Tamron, calm and professional throughout, even when being accused of things she didn't do. Meghan, defensive and hostile, turning a friendly conversation into a confrontation. Tamron standing her ground with grace. Meghan storming off the set like a child who didn't get their way. People started comparing this interview to other difficult interview moments in television history. But what made this one different was how one-sided it was. Usually in these situations, both people share some blame. The host asked something inappropriate, or the guest has a legitimate reason to be upset. But in this case, watching the full footage, it was clear that Tamron had done absolutely nothing wrong. She'd been kind. She'd been fair. She tried multiple times to de-escalate the situation, and Meghan had rejected every olive branch offered to her. What made it even more frustrating for people watching was the entitlement. The idea that Meghan seemed to believe she deserves special treatment, that she should be above answering basic questions, that simply being asked about her charity work, something most celebrities are happy to discuss, was somehow an attack on her. The moment when she said, "Maybe some of us deserve different treatment," became instantly infamous. People made memes about it. Late-night hosts joked about it. Social media users quoted it sarcastically because it revealed something that many people had suspected but couldn't quite put their finger on before. A sense that Meghan believed she was operating on a different level than everyone else, that normal rules didn't apply to her. And then there was Tamron's response. Everyone who comes on this show gets treated with dignity and respect, but nobody gets special treatment. Those words resonated with so many people because they spoke to something fundamental about fairness and equality. The idea that we're all worthy of respect, but none of us are so special that we get to skip the parts of life we find inconvenient. The way Tamron stood up for herself also struck a chord. As a black woman in media, she'd faced her own share of discrimination and hardship. But she didn't use that as a shield to avoid accountability. She didn't use it as a reason why she should be treated differently than anyone else. She acknowledged her struggles, but then did her job anyway, with grace, with professionalism, with integrity. The applause from the audience when Tamron pushed back became one of the most replayed moments because you could feel the relief in that applause. The sense of finally someone is saying what we're all thinking. Finally, someone isn't just nodding along and pretending everything is fine when it clearly isn't. Finally, someone is setting a boundary and enforcing it. Tamron's line about the cameras having footage, about the video not lying, was also brilliant because it wasn't a threat. It was just truth. In an age where everyone has their own version of events, where narratives can be spun 1,000 different ways, sometimes you need the objective reality of video evidence. And that video showed exactly what happened. No spin needed. The moment when Meghan unclipped her microphone and let it fall to the floor was seen by many as symbolic, like she was literally dropping any pretense of professionalism, just letting it all fall away. And the sound of that microphone hitting the floor, that dull thump, somehow captured the whole vibe of the interview. Something breaking, something falling apart. Tamron arranging for security to escort Meghan out safely was another classy move. She could have just let Meghan storm off on her own, but instead, she made sure someone was there to help. Even after everything that had happened, even after being attacked and disrespected, Tamron still showed care and concern. That's character. That's the mark of someone who rises above. The last exchange where Meghan said, "You're all going to see. You're going to realize you are wrong about me." And Tamron responded with, "Maybe, but right now, I think you need to take some time to think about why this happened. Really think about it," was devastatingly effective because Tamron wasn't arguing. She wasn't defending. She was just offering a truth that Meghan clearly needed to hear, that sometimes when everything goes wrong, we need to look inward instead of blaming everyone else. What made this whole situation so watchable, so engaging, so impossible to look away from was the authenticity of it. This wasn't scripted. This wasn't fake drama manufactured for ratings. This was two real people having a real conflict, and one of them handling it with maturity while the other spiraled. It also highlighted something important about accountability. Meghan had clearly been through difficult experiences. Nobody was denying that. But going through hard things doesn't give anyone the right to treat others poorly. It doesn't give anyone permission to lash out at people who haven't done anything wrong. Trauma isn't an excuse for bad behavior. Tamron modeled something really important in this interview. She showed that you can be empathetic and understanding while still maintaining boundaries. She acknowledged that Meghan had been through struggles. She expressed genuine care for Meghan's well-being, but she didn't let that empathy turn into acceptance of disrespectful treatment. She didn't sacrifice her own dignity to make someone else comfortable. The contrast in how each woman handled stress was also telling. When things got tense, Tamron got calmer, more measured, more intentional with her words. When things got tense, Meghan got louder, more aggressive, less controlled. One response made the situation better. The other made it worse. People also noticed how Tamron never raised her voice. Not once. Even when she was standing her ground, even when she was pushing back, she did it without yelling or losing her cool. That kind of controlled strength is rare. It's the kind of thing that can only come from years of experience dealing with difficult situations and difficult people. The way the audience reacted throughout the interview told its own story. They started out excited to see Meghan. They clapped when she first walked out. They were ready to like her and support her. But as the interview progressed and Meghan's true color showed, the audience turned. Not because they were mean or looking for drama, but because they could see what was happening. They could see someone attacking a person who was just trying to do her job. That organic shift in audience support was powerful because it showed that people can recognize unfair treatment when they see it. They don't need to be told who the good guy is. They can figure it out themselves by watching behavior and listening to words. The moment has been studied by media professionals and communication experts. They've analyzed what went wrong and what went right. And the consensus is clear. Tamron Hall conducted herself like a seasoned professional dealing with an impossible situation. She tried to maintain the interview. She tried to de-escalate. She tried to offer multiple exits and ways to move forward. And when none of that worked, she stood her ground without being cruel or petty. This interview has become a teaching moment. Journalism schools are showing it as an example of how to handle a hostile guest. Communication classes are using it to discuss conflict resolution and professional boundaries. Leadership seminars are pointing to Tamron's behavior as a model of grace under pressure. For Tamron Hall herself, this interview, as difficult as it was, actually enhanced her reputation. People who'd never watched her show before became fans. Her audience grew. Her influence expanded because people respect authenticity. They respect someone who stays true to their principles even when it's hard. They respect someone who can be kind without being a doormat. The interview also sparked larger conversations about celebrity culture and entitlement, about the difference between having valid complaints about unfair treatment and using those complaints as a shield against any criticism or questions about how fame and attention can sometimes create a bubble where people lose touch with normal social expectations. What Meghan seemed to expect was that her celebrity status, her royal connections, her past struggles would create a force field around her, that interviewers would be so afraid of upsetting her that they'd lob her softball questions and accept whatever vague non-answers she provided. What she encountered instead was a journalist who treated her like she would treat anyone else. With respect, yes. With consideration for her feelings, absolutely. But also with the expectation that she would engage in a real conversation and answer real questions. The fact that this caused such an extreme reaction reveals a lot about expectations and reality. In Meghan's world, apparently, simply being asked to name one charity she was working with was too much, too invasive, too aggressive. In the real world, that's called a conversation. Tamron's question about charitable work wasn't random either. It's actually one of the most common and beloved parts of her interviews. Her audience loves learning about different organizations doing good work. They've donated to causes they learned about on her show. They've volunteered their time based on conversations they heard. So, when Tamron asked Meghan about her charity work, she was actually offering her a gift, a chance to spotlight causes she cared about and potentially drive real support to them. The fact that Meghan couldn't or wouldn't do that said everything. The irony of Meghan accusing Tamron of not understanding struggle right before Tamron calmly explained her own experiences with racism and sexism in media was not lost on anyone. It highlighted a certain self-centeredness, an inability to see beyond her own experience, to recognize that others have fought battles too. Maybe different battles, maybe similar ones, but battles nonetheless. Tamron's response to that moment was particularly powerful because she didn't belabor the point. She didn't list every hardship she'd faced or try to compete in some kind of suffering Olympics. She simply stated her truth. I'm a black woman in media. I've been scrutinized my entire career. That was enough. It didn't need elaboration. Anyone paying attention understood exactly what she meant. The whole incident also raised questions about media training and public relations. Someone in Meghan's team should have prepared her better, should have warned her that she'd be asked real questions, should have coached her on how to handle normal interview situations without turning them into confrontations. The fact that she seemed so blindsided by basic journalism suggests either poor preparation or an unwillingness to listen to advice. What really captured people's attention, though, what made this interview impossible to forget, was the raw humanity of it. Watching someone unravel in real time is uncomfortable but also compelling. Watching someone else maintain their composure under attack is inspiring but also tense. The combination created perfect television in the worst possible way. Tamron's tiredness at the end after Meghan left when she addressed the camera, and you could hear that slight tremor in her voice made her more relatable and human. She wasn't some robot who could just shake off being attacked on national television. She was affected by it, but she didn't let being affected change how she did her job. The interview serves as a reminder that grace isn't the absence of difficulty. Grace is how we handle difficulty when it shows up uninvited. Tamron Hall showed grace. She showed strength. She showed what it looks like to stand up for yourself without tearing someone else down. She showed what it looks like to maintain your integrity even when someone is actively trying to paint you as a villain. In the end, This interview became less about Meghan Markle and more about Tamron Hall. Less about what was said and more about how it was said. Less about the conflict and more about the character revealed through conflict. And that character, Tamron's character, shone through brilliantly, professional, fair, strong, and kind, even in the face of unwarranted hostility. That's what people will remember. Not the drama, not the accusations, but the dignity with which one woman handled an impossible situation while another woman fell apart. That's the real story.